point that from my perspective as district attorney, I have an important role and information to share, but it's also very limited. I recognize that uh, Longmont area Democrats have brought together a wide array of speakers tonight, and I think that's absolutely appropriate and necessary. When I talk about these issues, I just want to be really clear that I'm doing so because I feel such an obligation to do whatever part I can, but with a focus on criminal justice and making sure that the justice system in Boulder County is functioning to the best possible extent and that we're protecting everybody in the community. Because I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but every person, regardless of their gender identity, sexual orientation, or immigration status in the United States, deserves fairness and compassion. And I can promise you, as district attorney, that I will always work as hard as I possibly can to the full extent and power of my office to make sure that people are kept free from harm, violence, and threats. So as we look at the valid concerns that bring us all here tonight, I put together a PowerPoint to go over some of these things in terms of from the lens of the district attorney's office. I will say our office is fully prepared for the challenges that may impact community safety and criminal justice. The reason I say that is we have a DA immigrant protection program and also a hate crimes initiative that we started with the help and leadership of Marty Moore and Rocky Mountain Equality and other organizations. Those two programs that we have in our office have been in place now for several years. They played a key role in 2018 and 2019 during the first Trump presidency, and I expect that we'll see more challenges where those programs being called upon. Really, what I want to emphasize is that victims of domestic violence and sex assault or hate crimes can and should be able to come forward. They should be able to make a report to law enforcement and come to the Justice Center without fearing repercussions, including immigration consequences. But also for the accused of a crime, that they should be able to enter the Justice Center without fear. So we've put a number of things in place throughout the state of Colorado, but also specifically here in Boulder County to try to do exactly that. And one of the things we just finished working on is a Know Your Rights document for community members. And the Longmont area Democrats sent this out earlier today. It's a one-page document. We have it in English and we also have it in Spanish, where it highlights what rights people have within Boulder County and what they can expect from law enforcement and the justice system, and also where those rights are not protected, what things they should be concerned about, as well as some of the resources that we have within the district attorney's office through our immigrant protection program. So that email went out earlier today. The attachments are on that email, but feel free to reach out to me and I'll give you my email address when I get done this evening. Always feel free to contact me directly if you have more information and questions. One thing I will say is that I'm grateful to the leaders in law enforcement. We have 9 law enforcement agencies in Boulder County. I'm not the boss of those agencies. I don't supervise them. Each of them is led by a police chief. And then, of course, the sheriff is independently elected. But we try to maintain a strong working relationship for moments like this, when our community has a desire and a need for and a right to more information, and we're able to come together and put together the information. So some of what I'm going to be hitting on tonight is an effort to share all that information out. Sheriff Johnson is currently out of town. Otherwise, I'm sure he'd be here as well. So if you have questions about the Boulder County Jail, I'm going to refer you to Sheriff Johnson, although I'll hit on some of that during this presentation. But we want to make sure that immigrants in our community and also LGBTQ plus individuals are protected and that they know they can come forward if they're victimized and that they can come forward without fear and have justice being done. So we have a number of things in place that are somewhat unique to Boulder County on this slide. The first one is that Boulder County law enforcement agencies will not seek any information about one's immigration status. So if they pull someone over at a traffic stop, for example, Boulder County agencies, whether it be the Ward Town Marshal, Boulder Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, Longmont PD, all of them have agreed they will not seek information about the immigration status. If they learn that information during that contact, for example, in a traffic stop, if someone says, I don't have a license and I'm not documented, so it's taken me longer to get identification from the Department of Motor Vehicles. Those conversations happen with some frequency. Law enforcement in Boulder County has agreed to not share that information with ICE absent a court order. So an actual order from a judge, federal or state, that requires them to turn it over. Similarly, in the district attorney's office, and this has been true since 2018 and before actually too, We will not seek to obtain or provide any information obtained about one's immigration status for a victim or a witness or a defendant in a pending case. And I say that for a couple of reasons. First, victims of domestic violence, sex assault, hate crimes, you name it, should be able to come forward. We want witnesses to come forward so we can ensure justice is being done through their testimony and their assistance. We also want the accused in a case, the defendant, to be able to come to the courthouse and see a case through to completion without having to hide in the shadows because they're worried they're going to be deported if they come to the courthouse. The state of Colorado has also put some protections in place, and that's that third bullet point there on the screen, that state agencies and the probation department, and I've confirmed this with the probation director for Boulder County, are prohibited from sharing any of that information with the federal government without a valid warrant or court order. So you see there on the screen that Colorado law bans ICE from arresting people for immigration detainers inside the courthouse or the immediate surrounding areas, sidewalks, the parking lot, and so on. ICE could follow someone from the parking lot, so there are limits on where those protections end, but this is state law under CRS 13-1-403. It was passed in 2019. One thing that our office is willing to do is if someone has a court date coming up and their attorney is worried that ICE is focusing on the public court dockets, because you can look at what cases are coming up on the court docket, we are willing to move court dates, even at the last minute, to have a different date and time for the defendant to appear in court if the defense attorney shares with us that there's a concern or a threat that the federal authorities might attempt to locate them and arrest them during the pendency of the case. We also, as an office, since 2019, consider immigration consequences as a factor in resolving criminal cases. So this has been in place for 5 years now. We'll continue to rely on it. It's been very successful and it's very innovative. I think we're one of the only jurisdictions in Colorado that does this, but where we actively consider immigration consequences in deciding what an appropriate outcome is, because there are some outcomes that trigger automatic notification of the federal government and possible deportation, and others that do not. So for traffic stops, domestic violence, and other cases, victims, witnesses, and defendants have protections in place, either through Boulder County District Attorney's Office, law enforcement, and/or state law. One area where it's more difficult is the jail. So the Boulder County Jail, I'm pleased to share with you, under the sheriff's leadership, will not proactively notify the federal government about immigration status. That's not true in other jails throughout the state of Colorado. However, immigration concerns can still be realized at the jail because information about who's in the jail is public information, which, if we take a step back, it's my opinion that makes sense, that if my brother is arrested tonight, I should be able to find out tomorrow if he's still at the jail and when he's going to appear in front of a judge. So those records are available to anybody about anybody in the jail. So I just received a message asking me to share the PowerPoint after, and I'm happy to do that. Boulder County Jail and Boulder County law enforcement have to honor warrants and court orders from federal court or state court. So one thing to distinguish between are administrative detainers and warrants. A detainer or a written request in Boulder County will not be sufficient to keep someone in custody. It has to be a court order or a warrant. And immigration officials, just as if I was seeking information about my brother's release, can find out when someone's being released. But a jail in Boulder County will not hold a person past their time for release, even if requested. So if ICE were to call Sheriff Johnson and say, "We are on our way, can you wait 2 hours for us to get there?" the answer from Sheriff Johnson will be no. We have other protections in place here in Boulder County. One is a U visa program. It's a very robust program in our jurisdiction, where we turn these around very quickly because we have staff assigned to my office. So someone who's a cooperating witness or victim in a prosecution for what's called an eligible offense under federal law, if they cooperate with the state prosecution, they can apply for a U visa, and I am the designated agency head for our office to authorize U visas. The sheriff and police chiefs also have that responsibility and authority. We also have in Boulder County a walk-in warrant program for certain low-level offenses, much like our Fresh Start warrant forgiveness program, where people can come down to the courthouse and clear their warrants. And if you want more information, let me know. But I have the phone number for the court there on the screen and our Fresh Start Warrant Forgiveness Program. We just did another one this past November, which was incredibly successful. We also have a bias and hate crimes initiative, and I want to recognize Marty Moore, who's one of the speakers tonight. She is an amazing leader who's brought such positive change to Boulder County and beyond. And when I was becoming district attorney in 2018, Marty helped me realize what a significant gap existed between LGBTQ plus community members and law enforcement. We've put a number of things in place to try to close that gap. More work remains to be done, certainly. But one of the things is we also have a non-emergency number that people can call directly to the DA's office if they don't want to contact law enforcement. We have a number of other parts of the hate crimes initiative. I'm happy to take questions on that. But I do want to hit on the other pieces that we have in place here in Colorado. Our office worked with many other allies on a change to the extortion law in Colorado. It prohibits individuals from threatening immigration consequences when they're seeking to engage in lawful acts. So one example would be unscrupulous employer steals the wages of the wait staff in their restaurant. Wait staff says they're going to make a complaint to the police, and the owner of the establishment says, if you do, I'm going to report you to ICE. We got the law changed in Colorado, so that now qualifies as a felony crime of extortion. Similarly, with help from then Representative Jonathan Singer and many other allies, we were able to change wage theft in Colorado from a misdemeanor to a felony. So it tracks the same thresholds for theft, for felony theft in Colorado, because obviously crimes against workers should be, and for our office are, a priority. No one should ever be denied their hard-earned pay. And then one thing that I want to emphasize is that having served as the co-chair for the Sentencing Reform Task Force here in Colorado, one of the changes that we made to the sentencing structure, this was 2 years ago, was reduce the maximum sentence for misdemeanors to 364 days. The magic of that, so to speak, is that 365 triggers a notification to the federal government. So if you have an undocumented person who's serving a year in jail, they would automatically trigger notification to the federal government. Colorado changed the law to reduce the maximum sentence based on a recommendation from the Sentencing Reform Task Force to make it 364 days. So in terms of justice system work, what I would say is, with an eye towards what people can do, is I would encourage people to visit our DA website or call us for information. We're always available. We also have many bilingual staff, but I'm really pleased to share with you that with the help and support of Marcia Lochamy, the county commissioner who's on with us tonight, we now have a full-time interpreter within the DA's office. So we're not tasking staff who have another job to also speak Spanish with people who are showing up at the office. We have a full-time interpreter. He's terrific. He just started a couple months ago, and he's already making such a positive difference. One of my hopes in being with you tonight is to make sure that hate crimes, wage theft, domestic violence, you name it, are all immediately reported to authorities so we can make sure justice is done and that people are held responsible, and that we're able to ensure that the rule of law is upheld here in Boulder County and throughout the state of Colorado. I would also invite and request that you share the Know Your Rights document that the Longmont area Dems sent out. And then if you would like our office to participate in community meetings, we have one coming up with the Democratic Women of Boulder County later this month. They invited me, and I've asked Hans Meyer, who's an immigration attorney, to join me to talk about the civil rights side and the civil law implications around immigration. Let us know. Again, I'm only looking at this and able to help through the prism of criminal justice. Obviously, it's critically important, though, so I'll make myself available. Our office is prepared to help, and I promise you we will stand strong with you to make sure the right thing happens to the extent of our ability to do so. So I'll stop there. I know I've covered a lot. Happy to take any questions, and I just really thank everybody for inviting me to join you tonight.
Thank you so much, Michael. Very glad to hear from you. And I have learned that Marta Lochaman would like to make an announcement, so I promised her that I'd let her do that right after you're done speaking. Marta, are you ready to make your announcement?
Oh, thanks. And I apologize because I was trying to get the attention of the folks running the meeting. So I'm going to give it back to the DA, who's been so gracious with time, and I'll just make my announcement. It's connected to what was being announced at the beginning in regards to events coming up for folks. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We are a bit over time, but we will certainly take a few questions for the district attorney if people have questions. I guess you can raise your hand and looks like Ray. If you can unmute yourself.
Hello. Thank you very much for taking my question. I'm curious, out of all of these best practices that you're implementing in our county, which ones do you see possibly being duplicated in other counties across the state, and what kind of work is being done to help promote these policies in other counties?
Well, Ray, thank you so much for your question. I've shared all this out with the elected DAs. There are 23 elected DAs total for the state of Colorado. I've shared these out with my colleagues, and in a number of jurisdictions, I think we will likely see continued protections for or new protections implemented for victims and witnesses who are coming forward, that their information will not be shared with the federal government. I think that's what most district attorneys would agree on. I would have to get more information about who's absolutely committed to it before I can answer with specifics, but I've shared this information out with the DAs, and there are a number of like-minded DAs. My colleagues are very dedicated to doing justice as well throughout the state of Colorado, so I'd be optimistic that we'd see more of these protections in place throughout the state.
Thank you. Marty Moore has her hand up.
Thank you, Michael. I have a question. Well, I have more of a statement. So some of the research I've been doing around this is that if people are convicted, if immigrants, undocumented folks are convicted of rape or something heinous, the rules all change, correct? It's not
Yes.
like a free pass.
Right. So that's a great question, and I should explain in a little more detail. Marty's absolutely right. So if someone's accused of a violent crime, someone does something to a victim, they are going to be prosecuted. And although they may face immigration consequences, that is not a factor that outweighs the harm that they've caused. So we prosecute those cases on a regular basis, and we always make sure that we fight for the victim and ensure that justice is done and public safety is upheld. Those are top priorities for us. On low-level offenses or offenses where there's some opportunity for us to secure the right and just outcome, but not have it trigger immigration consequences, we do consider that. So we've shared our immigration policy out with the defense bar since 2019. What I've shared tonight doesn't mark a change from what we've been doing and holding people responsible. So if someone commits a hate crime, for example, we would not plead that down to a trespass to help them avoid immigration consequences. So I want to be clear to Marty's question that we make sure that on serious crimes, especially anything involving a victim, we're giving a very close look to that to ensure justice is done.
Thank you, Michael. I'm afraid I'm going to have to